Hello and welcome to our second interview. Today we are speaking to an executive chef who lives in Australia. He's also a vegan. He's also my brother. His name is Bob Waters. Hi there, Bob.
Hi, Harry. How you going?
I'm very well, thanks. So I'm going to ask you a few questions about your lifestyle and about how you cook at work. Is that okay?
Of course it is.
Fantastic. So the first question, what was it that made you decide to go vegan?
First off, I'm not big boy. I'm not a big one for labels. As soon as you start labeling people or something, then there's always going to be a set group that disagrees. I'm never going to be vegan enough for some people. Yeah, I'm going to be far too vegan for others. As an example, I cook with meat. I've still got a pair of leather shoes. So I'm not a vegan per se. I no longer eat animal products, and I try and persuade others from doing it. So I wouldn't necessarily classify myself as a vegan, but I agree with a lot of their ethical standpoints, and I'm also trying to reduce the amount of animal products that, like I say, I eat, and encourage others to eat less of them as well.
Fantastic.
But from that, so what made me decide to stop eating animal products? Well, I've got a sort of short answer or a very long answer. Probably around 5 or 6 years ago, I realised that I was consuming far too much meat. I've never been great with dairy anyway, as with a large proportion of the planet's population. It didn't really agree with me. Caused me skin complaints, stomach problems. I held too much weight, caused me some issues with my knees and everything else. But I understood that dairy didn't agree with me, but there was a cost sort of benefit to it. I liked eating cheese, so once in a blue moon, I'd eat all the cheese and then I'd suffer the consequences. And gradually I ate less and less dairy until I was eating no dairy at all. And then during this time as well, my consumption of meat was very high. Working in kitchens, and I had access to very good meat, very good fish, so to speak. Not good for the animals, but in terms of flavor quality and what people would consider good quality. So I ate huge amounts of it, and there came a point when I was like, I shouldn't be eating this much. So I decided to go vegan for a month. And subsequently, well, during that month, I felt fantastic. I really did. Come the end of the month, I slowly started introducing animal products back into my diet because that's what I did. I ate out in restaurants with friends. Just about everybody I knew was either vegetarian, pescatarian, or a meat eater. So there wasn't anybody that I knew that completely espoused meat. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, prior to my wedding, my wife wanted to trim down a little bit, and thought that one way would be, again, reducing the amount of meat that she ate. So she gave it up for a week or so and was bemoaning the fact that all she was eating was stir fries and steamed vegetables. So rather than dissuade her from her new sort of lifestyle, I fully embraced it and said that, I'd do all the cooking. I'd batch cook a whole load of stuff so that when I was at work, Mel had something to eat. And we just got rid of all the animal products out the house. And very quickly, Mel had the same sort of epiphany that I did the year or 18 months beforehand, where she felt huge amounts better. And we just sort of rolled on from there. I don't think from from that point that we had any animal products in the house. I'd been drinking soy milk and almond milk for years because of my dairy intolerance anyway. And we just stopped bringing any meat home or anything like that.
Fantastic.
Is that enough?
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's great.
That's my short answer. Yeah.
That's your short answer. Would you like to give you a long answer?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Yeah. So what's your favorite vegan dish? First to eat and second to cook.
Right. Again, I'll be a bit difficult here. Food for me is it's many different things. You know, some of it's just sustenance and fuel. And then some of it's dictated to by what mood I'm in, where I'm at, the people I'm with. So to describe a favorite vegan dish, I mean, it could be anything from hot chips on the Welsh seafront with my mum and dad. You know, it could be, I don't know, olives sat in the south of Italy. You know, it could be, you know, a hot bowl of pumpkin soup on a cold day. So to say that I have one favorite dish, that's going to change on a day-to-day, mood-to-mood basis. But one of the dishes that definitely helped myself and my partner to continue eating without animal products, particularly at the start, was dals. I love a dal, any type of dal, and you know, quite often they're not particularly refined. It might not be, you know, one particular type of lentil or pulse. It's just any lentils in a slow cooker with a heap of spices, and then dipping anything that is slightly less runny than dal into that dal. Probably that, and I know this is really cliched, but hummus as well. Man, I love hummus. And you, again, same thing. You can put anything in it and then dip anything that's slightly less runny than hummus into the hummus to consume it. So those are probably my two sort of go-to favorites. And then to cook, I don't know, like a crowd favorite or a crowd pleaser is a papaya salad, and it's not cooked, but a lot of particularly the Southeast Asian flavors, they work really well with not cooking with animal products. You know, a lot of their dishes do have things like shrimp paste and stuff in, but you can easily remove those. And to start off with, when people are reducing the amount of animals that they're consuming, going quite heavy on spices and things to make that food a little bit more interesting, so to speak, then those sort of help. So maybe like a pad thai salad, that normally goes down pretty well when I'm cooking for friends.
Excellent. I remember back in 2009 when I was out living with you in Australia, and our brother-in-law was a vegetarian at the time. You made him a mushroom burger. I remember that was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, the mushrooms are good. I mean, I think the one thing that becoming vegan, you know, stopping eating animal products, whatever, the one thing it did was it made me a much better cook. I've been doing this since I had hair, which was a while ago, and I'd become particularly at home, and particularly when cooking for friends and family, I've become pretty lazy, in as much as I'd get a expensive piece of meat or an expensive piece of fish or an abundance of meat and fish, and I'd serve them with very little. And it would be, you know, here is this, you know, the decomposing flesh of a tortured animal on a char grill, seasoned correctly and served with a little bit of salad. When we stopped eating meat, the thing became, it was okay, well, I can't just eat that side salad. you know. So what do I do with that side salad? And it really sort of flipped around the way that I had to think about cooking and designing menus, because everything had always been the protein source. So you've got a piece of lamb, what are you going to serve with it? You know, and it might be, well, I'm going to put some, I don't know, some feta and beetroot with it, because that's going to work really well with that lamb. Then it became, well, I've got some beetroot. What am I going to do with the beetroot? Or I've got some cauliflower or some pumpkin or some lentils. What am I going to do with that? So it really sort of turned around the way that I had to think about how that I was structuring menus and food. And for that, it's definitely made me a better cook. I do apologise. I can't remember if you asked me a question or if I just started waffling on.
Don't worry. No, that's fantastic. It wasn't a specific question. I was just talking about, I think I was talking about a mushroom burger, but I'm not sure if it went away from there.
Yeah, but mushrooms are great, just so you know. Mushrooms
excellent.
are good.
I do like mushrooms. It wasn't until I was about 25 that I started eating them, but I had some today in a stir fry and yesterday as well, which didn't have any meat in it, just so you know.
Well done.
Thank you. So I've got the next question is, do you have any tips for people who might want to reduce their consumption of animal products?
Tips. Well, there's three real core reasons, I suppose, why I think that people should reduce the amount of animal products that they eat, or eliminate them entirely. And the three reasons are there's probably more reasons than three. For your health, we as a species, we don't need to consume animal products, I believe, full stop, but definitely not on the scale that we do these days, and definitely not how 90+% of these animals are produced. You know, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, obesity, they're just three things that are directly linked to the sheer quantity of animal products that people consume. So for your health, I've felt better ever since I stopped eating it. And I know I sound like one of those sort of nut jobs. Oh, ever since I stopped eating it, you know, every day's full of sunshine. Not quite that, but it's helped with a huge amount of things for myself. It will ultimately reduce the amount of money that you spend on tax, because most animal agriculture is heavily subsidized, as are pharmaceutical companies, and you only end up paying for, you know, your prescriptions and visits to the doctor and everything else because of your overconsumption of animal products and like dairy and meats. So that's kind of number one. Number two would be for the environment. Animal agriculture is horrific for the environment. When you look at the fires that we had last year in Australia, and whilst many politicians won't agree with it, they can be directly linked to climate change. The land clearing that goes on in Australia for grazing cattle is incredible. It's massive. You know, you've got farms the size of Belgium that they round up cattle with helicopters. Apart from the fact that they're not native to the country, they've been introduced. It consumes inordinate amounts of water to water the land, and then to grow the grain and soya to feed these animals, and then the water for the animals to consume, plus all the land clearing. It's terrible for the environment. When you look at the Amazon, the amount of land clearing that's gone on to graze cattle, I do apologise, and then to grow soya, which in turn is then fed to the cattle. I believe 75–80% of all soya that's produced on the planet is to feed animals, not us. And about the further 10% or 15% of that is for biofuels, which is adding a small amount to various fuels so that we can burn more stuff. Coupled with that, the methane production of of cows in particular, but also all the other animal agricultural business, and in the waste that they produce. It is a monumentally inefficient way of producing protein, which we don't need as much as the advertising industry leads us to believe. You know, you can get all the protein that you need from plants, because that's where cows and pigs and chickens, unless they're fed their brothers and sisters, which often happens, that's where they get all their protein. You know, I know it's an often quoted thing that the biggest, strongest animals on our planet are all herbivores. You know, the silverback gorillas, elephants. You know, they don't eat meat, so they get their protein from other sources. And then the third is for the animals themselves. I've got pets, I've got cats. Again, it's probably another reason why I can't be considered a vegan, because we do feed them meats, because unlike us, they're carnivores. But I think it's really odd that people can class themselves as animal lovers, yet consume animals that are treated or mistreated in such horrific ways. So, you know, people have a pet dog that they'll love and adore and they'll worship and they'll lavish with gifts and love and affection, and then they'll reach into their fridge and drink some milk. And dairy is, I mean, there's a slogan, dairy is scary, but the torture, humiliation and degradation that cows are put under to produce something that makes your coffee a little bit less black. You know, there's the late great George Carlin said, the quality of our thoughts is dictated by the quality of our language. And there's a huge amount of spurious language that is massively dishonest that is used within animal agriculture. So a meat processing plant, you know, it's not a meat processing plant, it's a torture and murder factory. You know, it's the same way that you describe Auschwitz as a work camp. It's not, you know. When the way that they produce milk from cows is a cow needs to be pregnant or needs to have been pregnant to produce the milk. So cows are kept pregnant, and they're kept pregnant by artificial insemination. Well, if you artificially inseminate a sentient being against its will, it's rape. And these cows are raped repeatedly, and their children are stolen from them on the day that they're born, taken away, and if they're males, they're ground up or they're sent off for veal. If they're females, then they're raised in a pen and they're subjected to the same horrific torture for 5 or 6 years until they're no longer any good to anyone, and then they're ground up and generally sold as grass-fed beef. And that's just cows. You know, chickens kept in pens that are pumped full of hormones and genetically modified over time so that they grow to ridiculous sizes so they can no longer walk. Pigs kept in cages their entire life. Like it's horrific. And it's something that I was aware of my entire life, but my eyes weren't really wide open, you know? So sort of they're three reasons why I think that people should reduce their animal consumption.
And those three reasons are, number one, you said was health.
For your health.
Good. Number two?
For the planet.
And number three?
For the animals.
Fantastic.
Yeah, from an ethical standpoint. Some tips: prepping and batch cooking and bulk cooking. You know, I know everybody is like really time poor, and one of the reasons that I often get from people is the reason that they don't consume more vegetables is because they take so much more time. You know, the reason that they're reliant upon animal products is they're so much quicker. You know, because you can just throw a steak on the grill. Well, if you find that you're time poor and you don't have time to prepare tasty meals, then pick one day of the week and produce some things in bulk. I mean, I generally have Sunday evenings off and I'll cook, you know, a dal or a couple of curries and some rice, and I'll stick that in the fridge for a few days. And then it means that we've got some breakfast, some dinner, you know, that's easily made. I mean, also, you know, or peel up and roast up a whole load of veggies, and you can then reheat them, or you can eat them as a salad or whatever.
Put them with couscous.
Put them with couscous. Dip them in hummus. You know, you could just buy some carrots and dip carrots in hummus, and you can. I'm pretty sure you can live off that. Have a nice big fruit bowl. Keep it on display so that when you walk past it, you know there's something that you want to eat. Don't hide stuff in the fridge the whole time. Tips. Other tips. Stop making so many excuses, and just stop being so lazy. Really, remove the animal products from your house. That's a really simple one. When you go and do your shop for the week or for that day, just try not buying any animal products at all. And then the stuff that you've got at home, you're then forced, I suppose, to make something out of. And stop fetishizing food. I can't even pronounce the word. Fetishising. Food, basically, we eat it for sustenance. And when I talk to people, there seems to be this ideal that every meal that you have has to be the best meal that you've ever eaten. And you couldn't possibly eat steamed greens because you don't like steamed greens. Well, steamed greens like you know, and if your car likes diesel, but you don't like diesel, so you put petrol in it, you're going to knacker the engine, you know. And if you like dairy, but dairy doesn't like you, and you continue to put dairy into your body, it's going to knacker your body. And your body likes leafy greens, you know. Your body likes pulses. Your body likes grains. Your body likes nuts. Some people's bodies don't like wheat, you know. People's bodies don't like gluten, so don't eat that. You know, eat quinoa instead, you know, or an abundance of other grains that you can eat. But you can have a balanced diet, and you don't need to rely on the decomposing flesh of a tortured animal. You know, you don't need to rely on cheese. You know, this seems to be one thing that people will say, oh, I don't know if I could give up cheese. Well, you can make any number of substitutes that are high in fats, you know, and that are salty or that are slightly sweet and gooey, and your taste buds change really, really quickly. If you give up sugar for 7 days, 8 days, then all of a sudden carrots and beetroot start tasting much sweeter. Oranges taste much sweeter. Bananas taste much sweeter. But if you keep giving yourself this excuse that you need to eat this, you need to eat that, and you're just too damn lazy to give it a go for your health, for the planet, and for the animals, then you're never going to get there. So stop making excuses and try a little bit more.
I mean, you've made a really good point there that my wife, Hema, obviously you know her well, she is lactose intolerant. So that was what made us make a big shift away from animal products. And, you know, I don't remember the last time we had milk in our house, and cheese is something that Hema was obsessed with. She loved cheese. We'd talk about cheese morning, noon, and night. But since it's been gone, we don't really miss it. And there are so many substitutes now. You can still have cheese on toast. It's not cheese per se, but there are so many substitutes that have been created that you can still get that if you desperately need it.
Well, again, we're just going back to the cheese and milk and things like that. There's a big push by animal agriculture to not let or to try and stop plant-based producers from calling things cheese or milk or burgers or sausages, because they're not. Well, in actual fact, I think it should go the opposite way. Whereas because we use language to disguise what things actually are, so rather than saying, well, I drink milk because you drink oat milk, you can drink oat milk, but if you're drinking dairy milk, then again it should be like stolen milk from a rape victim, or cheese, and meat should be called decomposing flesh, of a tortured animal. So rather than doing the whole, well, I eat cheese on toast because it's a cashew cheese, well, it's still cheese. Just call it what it is. Call it what it is. And so this inverted commas, or would you like oat milk spelt slightly differently? No, it's all cheese. And there are substitutes. Some of it you don't even need to substitute. I get asked questions with, well, what do you eat instead of meat? What should I replace that with? Should I, get like Beyond Beef patties? Should I get fake bacon? You can get these, these are all highly processed foods that you don't need to eat anyway. You don't need to substitute the meat for anything. It's just food. Ultimately, that's all it is. I eat food. Just on the tips as well. One more tip. Don't try and eat the same amount of food as you used to eat. If you eat high calorie dense foods like a piece of steak with some salad, that's going to fill you up, and it's going to provide you with inordinate more energy than just eating the salad. If you remove the steak, the fish, the eggs, the cheese from your foods, increase the amount of vegetables that you eat, because otherwise you're just going to be hungry. And one common complaint that I get from people when they try to stop eating meat, they do it for a week or so and they just complain that they're hungry all the time. You can eat so much more because the food is so much less calorie dense. To eat 2,500 calories in steak and cheese, or pizza, for example. I mean, you can eat 2,000 calories in a pizza quite easily. But to eat 2,000 calories of broccoli, it's going to take you a week. So increase the amount of food that you eat, increase the amount of food that's on your plate, and particularly at breakfast. So I tend to eat my larger meals of the day in the morning anyway, because I work through the night, but eat a big breakfast, eat a big lunch, and have, plenty of starches, plenty of carbs. There seems to be this big thing that carbs are bad, but vegetables and legumes and pulses, they're all made from carbohydrate, and make sure you get enough of them, because otherwise there's that whole thing. You eat 3 bowls of steamed veg a day, you feel weak, so then you just instantly revert to eating Philly steak, and cheese. But don't do that. Just eat till you're full, and snack on fruit and carrots and hummus. Carrots dipped in hummus. But yeah, just make sure that you consume enough food.
Okay. The next question. So we've talked a bit about your work. Has your lifestyle change affected your work in any way? You mentioned that it had made you a better cook or a better chef. Has it affected, obviously you're an executive chef, so you are in charge of all of the ordering and all of the menus and those things. Has it changed your approach to that in any way?
In some ways. I'm hesitant to say that the way that my lifestyle has changed the way that I approach things, because from a work perspective, it's business decisions. So in some ways it has. All the emulsions that we cook with, all the emulsions that we make, so things like your mayonnaises and salad dressings and stuff like that, we now use chickpea water instead of eggs. Now, I put my vegetarian and vegan food options are much better thought out than they ever were. And again, from a business perspective, the more vegetables, pulses, grains that we use in dishes, then there's a reduction in the cost. So there is a higher margin to be made from that. So again, that can be construed as a business decision. We offer a greater choice. So when myself and my wife go out for lunch or dinner, we live in regional New South Wales, so quite often there's not a huge amount of choice as to what we can have, and generally it means ordering something and removing the animal products from it. So by having a meal by having a menu that just contains animal products, you're alienating a certain group. You're not providing any options for anyone. So I now offer more vegan options that we can add animal products to, should you choose. So as opposed to it going the opposite way, where you need to remove animal products from that, we'll offer, say, a pumpkin salad, for example, that you can then add as much halloumi, chicken, steak, smoked salmon, to it as you should so desire. But it's a complete meal as it is. So it makes it easier for you to remove those or to not eat those animal products should you choose.
I really like that. You've obviously visited Spain a number of times, and the last time you came over, you were just starting out. Well, you've been vegan. I'll do it like this for you, vegan, for a year or so, I think. And yet in Spain, it's very difficult to eat anything that doesn't have animal products. I really like your idea, this thing of rather than taking it out, you can add it in for somebody if they want it. So rather than them getting their salmorejo, which is a cold tomato soup, rather than them getting it with the egg and the jamon in it, they could have it without it, and if they want it added in, they can put it in afterwards. That's a really good idea, actually.
Well, and again, from a business perspective, more and more people are, trying to give up meat, even if it's just for a small amount. And if you have a archetypal family of four, mum, dad, son, daughter, and one of those has decided that they'd like to reduce animal products. It could be mum or dad because they're trying to lose a little bit of weight. It could be, son or daughter because they've been to a farm and they love the little piglets and they can no longer eat piglets ever again, because of the look on this little pig's face. If you don't provide anything for that person, then generally they'll go elsewhere. If myself and my wife are going out with two friends that eat meat, and we go out for dinner, and the only thing that they can provide us is chips, then we're going elsewhere. And our friends are coming with us because they don't want to sit there at dinner time whilst we eat a bowl of chips dipped in tomato sauce. Now, don't get me wrong, I'll eat chips all day long, But if you're going out for dinner, then it comes back to that just stop being so lazy. We're in a commercial kitchen. There's 15 chefs in the kitchen. There's kitchen hands, apprentices, cooks. There's people front of house. We've got on these things these days. You've got that, which is a phone, by the way. There is all the information known to humankind on this device. If you're getting too many cauliflowers one day, just type in recipe for cauliflower, or vegan cauliflower, and there'll be thousands of recipes that come up. There is literally no excuse for you not to be able to provide options for people. And again, as a business decision, the more times that you alienate people from your restaurant, the less chance that you've got of making money. And also, those animal products that we do sell, again, from a climate perspective, all the meat that we sell has been tortured and slaughtered within Australia, as opposed to getting it from overseas. And we do try and source most of our animal products from as close by as possible, not so that we can hear their screams, but so that we're reducing that sort of carbon footprint. We're heavily into recycling. A lot of the waste products, particularly from veggie scraps and things like that, go into worm bins, go into composting. It's unfortunate that still a lot of stuff comes in plastic, but much less than it used to. And it's one of these sort of things where we do buy Australian produce, but for anybody that's looked at a map and not Mercator's projection, will realise that Australia is about the size of Europe. So when I say that we use Australian produce, that may mean that our avocados have come from Perth, which is the same thing as living in Seville and buying your avocados from Moscow. So it does have to travel quite a long distance, but we do try and get stuff from local producers that are nearby. And again, by using more of any of the ingredients that we use, not just chopping the bottoms off the bottom of the broccoli and throwing the bottom away, because for some reason people think that delicious green stem can't be used for anything. You can only use the florets. We use more of it. We roast things more often in their skins now, because that's where you get a lot of the fiber from. And again, it's just less wastage. So again, that can be construed as coming from a business decision, because we're maximizing our profit, but also it's just reducing waste and landfill and everything else. And if it's traveled here, we might as well use as much of it as we can.
That's a great point, actually. In the next lesson, in lesson 4, we are going to be talking a bit about food waste, and we'll be talking about composting, but also regrowing certain vegetables and making stocks and things like that from obviously your vegetables. Yeah. and any carcass from, as you put it, tortured and murdered. Was that it?
Tortured, slaughtered.
Tortured and slaughtered. Yeah. There you go. So from any of your tortured and slaughtered animals, you can then make a stock from it, to at least make the most out of the whole animal. If you are going to eat an animal, at least make the most out of it. So in lesson 4, we're going to be talking about that.
That is something that I think it's really it's quite upsetting. That particularly like supermarkets, when you walk in the morgue section of the supermarket, everything's packaged up as chicken breasts or the salmon fillets. They've got rid of the heads and they've got rid of the ends, and everything's cut down into these small bite-sized pieces, and so much of it is just discarded. Now, if you're intent on eating meat, then really utilizing as much of that animal as possible is only really fair for the whole process. And again, from a climate perspective, and from the welfare and from the ethical standpoint of the animals, if you're going to subject something to this horrific process, then at least use the whole thing. Don't just cut out the T-bone steak and throw everything else in the bin. So I'll look forward to your next lesson.
Fantastic. I hope it's as enlightening as this one. The next question is, what can we do to reduce agriculture's giant carbon footprint? Now, I mean us as normal people, not the farmers, not the politicians, not the pharmaceutical companies, but me, you, Pete in the street, Pepe on the corner, what can we do to reduce agriculture's carbon footprint?
It really is quite simple, and that is stop eating animal products. Vote with your feet, per se. It's really obvious that there is an increasing market for vegan food. We've been doing this quite a lot, the bunny ears.
Got a lot of bunny ears.
Yeah, as soon as you see that McDonald's is advertising a vegan burger, or KFC, which starts selling a vegan chicken burger, there's a market for it. And the more that people purchase these problems, and the more that people purchase these products, and the more that people turn away from traditional products like dairy milk and meats, the more choices that we're going to get as a consumer, the more different ways that they're going to give us alternatives, that people will see there's a dollar sign, that they can make some money from this. So they'll offer more and more options, and it will reduce the money that these places can make money from. If everybody stopped eating beef tomorrow, which I know is massively unlikely, but if everybody did and the demand for it went, then they'd have to stop grazing as much cattle. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they stop grazing as much cattle, then the land that they're clearing in the Amazon rainforest, it doesn't become profitable anymore. So they'll stop doing it. And then that soy that they're producing to feed to the cattle can then be used to feed people. Maybe they can put some of that soy in those packed lunches that the British government, which they've said it costs 30 quid, which apparently costs £5.12. Maybe they could put some tofu in those packets, or some Beyond Beef burgers, or some beetroot, radish, some lettuce, rather than a loaf of bread, two bananas. It basically looks like a jail tin that they're profiteering out of.
But on that note, you mentioned bananas, and it leads me to think about fruit. And bananas, obviously, they don't grow in the UK. So people in the UK, that they've had to travel there. It's also something I've noticed recently is an awful lot of unseasonal fruit. My good friend Tommy told me the other day, almost everything we eat says it comes from near where you live. So they're getting their strawberries in November and all these other different products that are not seasonal to that area. So would that be something you might suggest as well, like going to a local greengrocer, perhaps buying locally for the produce that has been grown locally?
Well, buying something from your local greengrocer doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to have been grown locally, because your greengrocer will be buying the stuff from the same big markets that supermarkets are buying from, that restaurants are buying from. And, now, because there is a demand for strawberries in November in the UK, whereas 25 years ago there wasn't, because we didn't grow them in the UK in November. But trying to eat things in season, there's obviously some that's going to help. And again, it becomes a bit more fun. If you can choose anything that you want to eat, and what you want to eat is avocado on toast, then you're just going to eat avocado on toast the whole time, because you can buy avocados that are out of season in the UK or in Spain or in New South Wales. But if you buy something that's in season, and when you say locally from where you live, in November, maybe Brussels sprouts in the UK. So you're not going to be eating strawberries, but you're going to be eating Brussels sprouts. It forces you to come up with something that you're going to enjoy. So it makes it a bit more fun. So having a seasonal calendar can help to reduce the carbon footprint, and having a look and seeing what is in season in your area. And that'll also help with your pocket. because things that are grown in season close to you are generally going to be cheaper. Just going back, if there can be pressure put on governments to, because of the animal agriculture is heavily subsidised by governments, so it makes it cost efficient to produce milks and meats and to import, a huge amount of meats and stuff. Britain imports huge amounts of meat from New Zealand, for example, lamb. Because of huge government subsidies. So if people start eating more vegetables and eating more things locally to them and things that are in season, and not eating as much imported and intensively reared animal products, then governments might start using that money to subsidise local producers to produce vegetables, and then in turn reduce the price of vegetables. Because for me, it's insane when I see that chicken thighs are cheaper than aubergine or eggplant, as we call it here. Chicken thighs are $4.99 and eggplants $9.99. But that's because the chicken is heavily subsidised with my tax dollars and the eggplant isn't.
That's something that always gets me
as well.
That's something that always gets me when I go to the supermarket. And I see two of the things I hate most, actually, bottled water and milk. And I see that the milk is actually cheaper than the bottled water, when the amount of water that's gone into making this milk. And then, I would never buy the bottled water. I think it's absurd. But yeah, that kind of, it's a very strange situation for me. I can't, it's not one I can get my head around. I know why it happens. I just can't understand why they let it happen.
The thing is, stuff in plastic as well. If it comes in plastic, just don't buy it. Just try not to buy it. Generally because, it's had to have been transported from a long way away. If it's got dirt on it, it's good. It is good. If you can go to a local greengrocer's and it's got dirt on it, then that means it's come from nearby. But if it's wrapped up in plastic and air bubble wrap and everything else, then it's come from a long way away. So try and steer clear of it.
I like that one. So you heard it here, guys. If it's got dirt on it, it's good. I think that might be my next tattoo. I think you might be able to find space somewhere on your body for that as well.
Perhaps, yes.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question. Well, it's for a suggestion, really. Do you have any recommended reading or viewing? I remember a while back you told me a few things I could watch, which really did open my eyes, and they've made me massively reduce the amount of animal products that myself and my family consume. We aren't vegans, but we are striving to get a bit closer to it. Now I'm working from home. I've got a lot more time to focus my time on batch cooking, and my wife is an exceptional cook, so she's been teaching me a lot about that. But is there anything you could recommend? Well, not only perhaps a recipe book, maybe, or somebody that's written a recipe book, or a specific chef, maybe. But not only that side of things, but also in general, something we can watch to help us open our eyes as to the problems that the agricultural industry brings about.
There's a few. They're all available on YouTube or streaming network like Netflix and things like that. And they're sort of almost like a gateway to it. Like Cowspiracy is very good. It's that starts off, and it's heavily involved. It's heavily focused on the climate and where the money goes. Who's making money out of this. Then there's Earthlings and Dominion, which really aren't for the faint-hearted. They really do show what goes on in factory farming. But I think that people have a moral obligation. If you want to eat meat and you want to drink milk and eat cheese, then you should see how it's produced. I remember Dominion, I think, was one of those ones where it broke me and my wife. And it's horrific what goes on there. So I think they're important, but they're probably not, well, they should be dinner time viewing, and they should be shown to everybody, including children. But there's some of those ones that people might go, oh, I'm not going to show that to my 6-year-old.
Well, I remember with Cowspiracy, I told one of my former co-workers to watch it, and he said to me, oh, I don't want to watch that, because if I do, I'll never want to eat meat again. And I just thought, that's exactly the point. Yeah. So anyway, I interrupted you. What are your, so we've got Cowspiracy, Dominion, did you say?
Dominion.
What else?
Yeah, Earthlings.
Earthlings.
And then there's, What the Health and Forks Over Knives, which are much more focused on why animal products are bad for our health. Cowspiracy is a little bit more leans towards the environment. And then Dominion and Earthlings are more heavily focused on the ethical standpoint and why it's abhorrent what we're doing to sentient beings. Books wise, I really like Dr. Michael Greger. He's written 2 fantastic books, which are How Not to Die and How Not to Diet. And there's lots of peer-reviewed studies in there as to why, again, animal products are so bad for our health. Then there's a couple of people on Instagram, I don't know what influencers. There's James Aspey and Plant Proof, who's Simon Hill. They're both Aussies. James Aspey famously didn't talk for a year to highlight the problems of the voiceless, so the animals that are in the way that they're treated. They're also big into sort of their workouts and stuff like that, and it just proves that we don't need to eat animals to be the size of a house. And then from a cooking standpoint, Thug Kitchen's a really fun book. It has a lot of fun recipes in there, like cauliflower wings. So like buffalo wings, but made from cauliflower, various things like that. That's a fun book. Smith and Daughters as well, and that's written by non-vegans, but using wholly plant-based foods. And then just any cookbook that you've got, and just avoiding the animal product from there. Seeing what you can do with your favorite recipes. Lasagna. This which is in your pocket. But lasagna, and just go, well, I can't use butter, I can't use milk, I can't use beef mince. What can I use instead? And there is so many things. I'll make a bolognese, and we use there we go, complete pearl barley instead of the beef mince. And you can cook anything down. There's but you just type in vegan beef stock and masala will come up, but there'll be an abundance of things there. So use this rather than for looking at videos of cats. Also use it for looking at videos of cats.
Obviously.
But this for recipes, it's a great tool for that.
I love it. I mean, something our granddad used to say. Now, he didn't start cooking until he retired, and I remember he did make the best roast potatoes in the world. But something granddad always used to say was, if you can read, you can cook. I mean, maybe, myself, I'm not particularly creative in the kitchen, but I can cook because I can read. Hema can create stuff. She can invent things out of nowhere. I'm not so good at that. But yeah, if you can read, you can cook.
But not even that. Even if you can't read, you can follow a tutorial on YouTube.
Excellent. Well, thanks for all of your advice and all those suggestions. I know I've got a lot of reading to do now. Is there anything you'd like to kind of leave us off with? Anything else you'd like to say?
There's 2 things. One which you'd almost certainly have to cut. But there's a quote that I read last night, actually, that I really, really enjoyed. And it's from Gus Spieth, who's an environmental scientist and lawyer. And forgive me, I'm going to have to read it. I used to think the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that within 30 years of good science, we could address these problems, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. We scientists don't know how to do that. And it just goes back to all of this, that you can stop eating as much meat as you do, but you're too greedy to do it. You can stop drinking as much milk and eating as much cheese as you do, but you're just too selfish about to do it. And you can stop all this torturing and pain and suffering and climate, horrificness that's going on, but you're just too apathetic. And so it comes down to yourself. It's personal choice as well. We can all make these decisions to improve upon this, but putting pressure on other people and governments, not voting for people who deny this sort of stuff. When you do get the opportunity, putting pressure on elected officials, putting pressure on supermarkets, greengrocers, all these people, and voting with your money and your wallet, and to try and change some of this. And he's right. It's, scientists can tell us about climate breakdown. They can tell us, about biodiversity loss, but unless we stop being so apathetic, so selfish and so greedy, we're never going to fix it. 65% of the world's population are intolerant to lactose in some form. And once you've given it up for 2 weeks, a month, and you go back to it, you'll realise inflammation goes, your weight goes. And I know I sound like one of those health nut, maniacs, whatever it is, and I'm getting a little bit excited now. But just give it up. And you're not signing a contract. You don't have to give it up for life. A bacon sandwich, an egg sandwich every now and then, that sort of comes up. You go out to eat at your grandma's and she's cooked a leg of lamb. You don't have to offend her by not eating it, but just make a concerted effort to drastically reduce the amount that you eat. Not, I'm not going to eat meat on Monday evening, but there's 21 to 28 meals a week that you're eating that contain animal products. Halve it, quarter it, meat once a week, eat meat on a Monday, eat dairy on a day that doesn't have D in it. But really make it, there you go, you like that, make a conscious effort to reduce, and you will save money on not just the products that you're purchasing, but you'll save money on medications that you need. Do it for yourself, do it for your pets, do it for your family, do it for the livestock. Just drastically reduce it. Not a little bit, not once a week, not once a month. Like, go the other way. Meat is a treat. And then, as with myself and my partner and many of my friends, the less that we've done it, the less that we want it. And I get asked these days, what is it that I miss? And the one thing that I really wish about all of this is that I did it sooner, and not just a little bit sooner. That as soon as I was conscious about how it made me feel, what it did to the environment, what it did to animals, that's when I should have stopped. But I wish that I'd known about this much, much earlier. Like my parents, they eat very little these days. They're in their 60s.
Very little meat.
And very little meat.
Eat a lot
they eat a lot of food. But if, two 60-year-olds, 65-year-olds can just remove meat and dairy from their diet to such an extent that dad has a tin of sardines once a week and they occasionally eat a bit of local lamb. I mean, that's 20 meals a week that they're not eating any animal products in. And if they can do it, then everybody can do it.
Exactly.
And again, for me, maybe not so much, but when I talk to my old man and his blood pressure's dropped, his glaucoma has gone back to what it was 25 years ago, the pressure behind his eyes, his blood sugars, his BMI's dropped, all of these things. If that can happen to a 65-year-old...
I might have to bleep that word out at the end there. Anyway, okay. I know you've got to go. You've got work to do. I know I've got to go. Yep. I've got dinner to eat. Tonight I'm having pumpkin soup. So something you mentioned before. It's cruelty-free. So I want to say a big thank you for everything you've done there, Bob. And I will speak to you very soon.
Thanks very much, mate. It's good to see you. Send my love to Olivia and Emma.
Will do.